So today we are going to talk about Herod Antipas, Jesus, and John the Baptizer, what they knew about each other, what happened between them. And this is like the third part in a series where we looked about Jesus and his political relationships, either allies or enmity with uh, powerful Jews, powerful Romans, including what Jesus' relationship was with, for example, Pontius Pilate and Sejanus. And now we're looking at the one of the most powerful uh, Jews at the time, Herod Antipas.
Well, I'd put an asterisk on that.
Yeah, yeah. Please clarify that. Yes, you're right.
Well, I mean, Herod was a Idumean who
Yep.
was whose ancestors were taken over by the Maccabee and then forced converted into Judaism. So they were never considered fully kind of Jews at the time, I think.
Hmm.
So
Excellent. Yeah, great. Thank you. Okay, so all right, we are going to again look at this timeline here of some rulers, just to kind of get our bearings to understand what we're talking about. So in the last meetup, when we talked a lot about the two Romans, the two big Romans at the time, one being Pontius Pilate, who was the prefect, the governor in Judea, and one it was Sejanus, who was the de facto emperor while Tiberius was absent from Rome. So, as we talked about, Sejanus is not really known today as much because he was never officially the emperor, and so his name is not known as much as like Augustus and Tiberius and Caligula. But for a time, Sejanus was pretty much the de facto emperor, and was right during in the middle of Jesus's ministry. And Pontius Pilate was appointed by Sejanus, so there was definitely an alliance, you could say, between those two, like just even internally within Rome's own politics. And Herod Antipas, it is argued, had a alliance with Sejanus as well. We're also going to be talking about here Caligula, because this the story about how Herod fell from power actually involves Caligula, because there were several there the emperors and emperor families had, or maybe I should say it the other way, the Herodians had certain friendly relations with the Tiberius's family. So, and this comes to play later on. Okay, so first of all, here's just the first question we're going to ask is like, what did Jews think of Herod Antipas? Now, this is definitely not an exhaustive answer by any means. It's just one very small example, actually two small examples of maybe what some Jews may have thought of Herod Antipas. So this is a quote just from the Wikipedia page. Devin, would you like to read it?
Yep. So what did Jews think of Herod Antipas? The Tetrarch's most noted construction was his capital on the western shore of the Sea of Galilee, Tiberias so named to honor his patron Tiberius, who had succeeded Augustus as emperor in 14 AD. Residents could bathe nearby at the warm springs of Amias, and by the time of the First Jewish-Roman War, the city's own buildings included a stadium, a royal palace, and a sanctuary for prayer. It gave its name to the sea and later became a center of rabbinic learning. However, pious Jews at first refused to live in it because it was built atop a graveyard and therefore a source of ritual impurity. Antipas had to colonize it using a mixture of foreigners, forced migrants, poor people, and freed slaves. At other times, Antipas was more sensitive to Jewish tradition. His coins carried no images, which would have violated Jewish prescriptions against idolatry. When Pontius Pilate, the governor of Judea from 26 AD to 36 AD, caused offense by placing votive shields in the Antonia Palace at Jerusalem, Antipas and his brothers successfully petitioned for their removal.
Okay, great. So one thing that I think about from this text here is, so Antipas is first of all trying to honor and placate his Roman overlords by naming the city after Tiberius. And as I mentioned earlier, too, that Antipas did have an alliance with Sejanus, and Pontius Pilate did as well. But the one thing that we know from actually the New Testament text, or at least the one thing that's claimed in the New Testament text, is that at least for a time, Antipas and Pontius Pilate were at enmity with each other and hated each other, or definitely were had a feud going on. And it's possible, I don't know this for sure, but it's possible that maybe part of that has to do actually with this story here of Pilate placing the shields in Jerusalem, and which were offending the Jews, and Herod Antipas basically gets involved and gets them in petitions and gets them removed. Maybe that was the thing that caused a feud between Pilate and Antipas, or maybe there was already some feud going on too, and that was just kind of maybe one more knock against them. What do you guys think about anything here from this text, or what Jews just in general may have thought about Antipas?
Just trying to think here. It's interesting that Pilate didn't seem very sensitive to the norms of the area, and Antipas kind of knew well enough by that point what to do, what not to do to piss people off. However, he still did some things that pissed people off.
Yes. Yeah, and that may be was common throughout all the Herodians, and or maybe you could even say to a certain sense. I mean, maybe even the Maccabeans and the Hasmoneans too were, you could kind of maybe say the same thing, that some Jews were very offended by their behavior. Yeah.
Yep.
So I guess in a certain sense, it's kind of the norm. I guess there's always, you can't please everyone, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It was like, who was more corrupt? And if I remember, when the Pharisees were a party against certain, like they were against certain Maccabean rulers, so they were actually in favor of Herod or Herod's father, Antipater, I think, when he first came to power. But then they kind of went against him when they realized that he wasn't any better than the Hasmonean rulers.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so now we're gonna suddenly jump to the end, or basically Jesus' ministry, and then we're kind of work backwards from there with some text. So let's just jump now to all of a sudden now the trial of Jesus, the end of Jesus' ministry. This is according to Luke, and the question that we're looking at is, what role did Herod Antipas play in this? Eric, would you like to read this one?
Sure. Then the whole company of them arose and brought him before Pilate, and they began to accuse him, saying, "We found this man misleading our nation and forbidding us to give tribute to Caesar, and saying that he himself is Christ, the king." And Pilate asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And he answered him, "You have said so." Then Pilate said to the chief priests and the crowds, "I have found no guilt in this man." But they were urgent, saying, "He stirs up the people, teaching throughout all Judea, from Galilee even to this place." When Pilate heard this, he asked whether the man was a Galilean, and when he learned that he belonged to Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him over to Herod, who was himself in Jerusalem at that time. When Herod saw Jesus, he was very glad, for he had long desired to see him, because he had heard about him, and he was hoping to see some sign done by him. So he questioned him at some length, but he made no answer. Chief priests and the scribes stood by, vehemently accusing him, and Herod with his soldiers treated him with contempt and mocked him. Then, arraying him in splendid clothing, he sent him back to Pilate. And Herod and Pilate became friends with each other that very day, for before this, they had been at enmity with each other.
Great. What do you guys think?
Interesting.
One thing I was thinking about is that there are certain things in this text that modern historians may find really not historically valid, and there are others things that they may indeed find valid. For example, as we talked about in the last meetup, the fact that Pilate himself is presented here as kind of hesitant to crucify Jesus is something that a lot of historians don't like, because it doesn't fit the character that we find of Pilate in other texts from this time period. But one thing though here that does seem to fit more of like the historical consensus among modern historians, I guess, is that apparently the implication is that neither Pilate nor Herod knew a lot about Jesus, or at least had seen him before. Like, for example, this text implies that Pilate wasn't even sure that he was from Galilee. And it implies that Herod never saw Jesus before, but that Herod was very familiar with Jesus. He had heard about Jesus, but never saw him. And I think that's something that modern historians would probably accept.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like plausible, that, I mean, I think the timeline is probably condensed on like whatever this is.
The timeline, what?
The timeline seems condensed, like when Herod saw Jesus, he was very glad, sending him to Herod's jurisdiction. This had to have taken a little while, right?
Well, actually, it does say that Herod was in Jerusalem actually at this trial, and so like, so like Herod just kind of happened to be in Jerusalem. Actually, I guess it was for the Passover, and
maybe, yeah.
But yeah. So anyway, so there's something. What's really interesting though is that the Gospel of Peter gives a different account. And what's really interesting too is that I believe it's Bart Ehrman, but I do need to verify this, but it's possible, or I have heard things before, I need to verify this, that the Gospel of Peter was more popular in early Christian circles than the Gospel of Mark for a time. Now, eventually, we talked about this before, but the Gospel of Peter eventually fell out of favor because they interpreted it because a feud developed within Christianity, early Christianity, about like whether Jesus really died or just he appeared to die or appeared to suffer. And the Gospel of Peter was eventually rejected because it seemed to indicate that he only appeared but didn't really suffer. And but I believe that one way we know that the Gospel of Peter was more popular than the Gospel of Mark, the way we know that is because of just how early Christian fathers would reference it, would cite it in their writings. And apparently, and again, this is the thing I need to verify, I don't remember who said this, I believe it was Bart Ehrman, but the Gospel of Peter was cited more frequently in the beginning than the Gospel of Mark. So this is the account from the Gospel of Peter. But of the Jews, none washed their hands, neither Herod nor one of his judges. And since they did not desire to wash, Pilate stood up. And then Herod the king orders the Lord to be taken away, having said to them, "What I ordered you to do, do." But Joseph, the friend of Pilate and of the Lord, had been standing there. And knowing they were about to crucify him, he came before Pilate and requested the body of the Lord for burial. And Pilate, having sent to Herod, requested his body. And Herod said, "Brother Pilate, even if no one had requested him, he would have been buried, since indeed Sabbath is dawning. For in the law it has been written, the sun is not to set on one put to death. And he gave him over to the people before the first day of their feast of the unleavened bread." So I think that this text here is very interesting for two reasons. One, well, first of all, this is an independent tradition. It's not part of the synoptic tradition, for example. So this is an independent witness or account of the trial of Jesus. Now, the two things that are interesting about this is that Pilate, again in this one, seems hesitant or not interested in killing Jesus. So we have kind of like another independent source testifying this. And then two, the other thing about this one is that it does seem that the major person pushing for the execution of Jesus was Herod himself, which we don't actually get. That's not really the impression we get from the canonical Gospels.
Yeah. So wait, so what's the main thing here again? It's like,
so it's basically like Herod is kind of the one that's pushing for the execution of Jesus, and Pilate is just kind of in the presentation as we have in the Gospel of Peter. Pilate is just kind of playing along.
gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, not really resisting, but definitely not leading the charge.
Okay.
Yeah, and so and then this text puts the blame squarely on Herod and the Jews, and I guess even his judges. Herod, his judges, the Jews, who do not wash their hands, meaning they don't. They're taking responsibility for this.
Right. I mean, okay.
What?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, it's just interesting. They don't distinguish which Jews, though.
Yeah. Oh, you're right. That is a really good point. I totally agree with that. That you can't generalize. There's different factions here. People today generalize, and the author of the Gospel of Peter as well is generalizing, and that's very dangerous. You have to be really cautious about that.
That's just. I mean, I'm just trying to. That makes me think that it's written later than.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, it's written later than what the events are. But like, if you can't even distinguish which groups are trying to do this and just say the Jews, that's just telling you what's going on politically at the time the Gospel of Peter was written. Clearly, there was by that time they didn't consider themselves
Jews at all. Right. Exactly.
So they're just kind of saying those guys who don't believe in this particular version of Judaism, and maybe by that time it even moved on to something a little different anyway. It just makes me seem like they were out of touch with what the political scene was. So that's all.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear what you mean.
It's still, so it's like, it's still early. I mean, it's still, you have church fathers quoting from it, but it's still, post Paul and popularity of that version.
Right. Yeah. Okay, now here we have the story of the execution of John the Baptizer according to the New Testament. So basically, just as we have different versions of the trial of Jesus between the canonical Gospels and the Gospel of Peter, we also have some different stories of the execution of John the Baptizer. So let's see, Eric, I think maybe.
No, Devin, I think I read.
Oh, Devin, yeah, you're right.
Sure. All right, so the execution of John the Baptizer according to the New Testament. For it was Herod who had sent and seized John and bound him in prison for the sake of Herodias, his brother Philip's wife, because he had married her. For John had been saying to Herod, "It is not lawful for you to have your brother's wife." And Herodias had a grudge against him and wanted him put to death. But she could not, for Herod feared John, knowing that he was a righteous and holy man, and kept him safe. When he heard him, he was greatly perplexed, and yet he heard him gladly. But an opportunity came. Yeah. Sorry, that's my son. But an opportunity came when Herod, on his birthday, gave him a banquet for his nobles and military commanders and the leading men of Galilee. For when Herodias' daughter came in and danced, she pleased Herod and his guests. And the king said to the girl, "Ask me whatever you wish, and I will give it to you." And he vowed to her, "Whatever you ask me, I will give you, up to half of my kingdom." And she went out and said to her mother, "So what should I ask for?" And she said, "The head of John the Baptist." And she came back immediately with haste to the king and asked, saying, "I want you to give me at once the head of John the Baptist on a platter." And the king was exceedingly sorry, but because of his oaths and his guests, he did not want to break his word to her. And immediately the king sent an executioner with orders to bring John's head. He went and beheaded him in the prison and brought his head on a platter and gave it to the girl. And the girl gave it to her mother. When the disciples heard of it, they came and took his body and laid it in a tomb. I like the filial piety here. Like, Mom, what should I do?
Right.
Well, among all the things you can ask for in the world, get this guy's head. Okay,
Right.
Mom. An example of a wonderful, just great daughter, just listening to mom. Mom, what should I do? Get some guy's head.
Right.
That was just great.
So the story is that John was becoming really popular. John had a significant movement in the area, gaining lots of followers. And then, though, he basically was very critical, vocal and critical of Herod Antipas, because Herod had been married to a princess of Nebatea, and he divorced this princess of Nebatea, which that itself caused a political scuffle, and there was definitely some people getting upset about that, and some complications with that. And instead, he married Herodias, which was his brother Philip's wife, who was a tetrarch or ethnarch in another nearby place there. So this really upset John, and John was very vocal about it. And then Herodias was really upset that John was criticizing them, and because John was getting popular. And then basically Herodias wanted to take John out, but she didn't have the opportunity. So according to this text, it's basically, it's not really Herod that executes or has the desire to execute him. In fact, actually Herod's trying to keep him safe, but it was because of a situation at a party that led to the execution of John. What do you guys think about that?
It's so strange.
It is.
It's just so bizarre. I don't. So what's the deal here with wanting him dead so bad? It's odd. The other thing that's kind of odd is, why would Herod say that?
Right.
You could get up to half my kingdom.
Right.
Like, what is?
Was he like super?
How drunk do you have to be?
Yeah.
And even then, like, I don't think you'd be that drunk.
Right.
that seems so utterly bizarre.
This is I agree with you. This is a story that's really hard to believe. Right.
But it's so bizarre. You almost like it's at that level where it's like, what's the point of even making this up? I don't get the point of it being true. I don't get the point of it being made up either. Like, I don't.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, what was the basis for where did the inspiration come for writing?
Where does the story come from? It's so odd.
That's a really good question. I like that. I like the way you put that. It's like so out there that it doesn't seem to be historical. Yet there doesn't seem to be any reason why someone would make up something like this either.
Yeah, that's like on both sides. I don't get it. Yeah.
That's good.
The other things I don't get is so for John the Baptist, why would he be putting himself out there for criticizing this?
Sorry,
like how much of a dog does he have in that fight to put himself out there politically? We're criticizing Herod and all this other stuff happening.
So like so restate your question, kind of.
Why would he put himself out there for this?
Oh, why would he be willing to execute John, even if it was?
No, why would John be willing to risk execution for those criticisms?
Oh, okay. So you're asking why is John himself willing to cause lots of problems for himself by criticizing Herod, right?
Because it's like political leaders being bad in their personal lives, and I don't know.
Yeah,
it's sure. I mean, this has happened many times before too.
So
I'm not sure why he's throwing himself out there for this particular moment.
Are you kind of saying that John should have seen this coming? That basically or John he knew how big of a deal this was, or that maybe he didn't know how big of a deal it was. You don't just criticize, speak bad of Herod or of the ruler, the governor, or the king, whatever, and think that you get away with it, right?
Yeah. Well, my thing is, I wonder why he felt it was important to speak for this. Because it's another political leader, and you can see a whole bunch of stuff showing up with political leaders, even throughout, Old Testament writings too, where it's like, man, they do some really messed up stuff.
Yeah.
So to put yourself, you would have to like keep repeating this, because it wouldn't just be enough to say like, oh man, that's awful, isn't it? Like you're having a discussion with somebody and then it just starts spreading like wildfire. Like those discussions would happen. Like to get your name out there this much, I think you'd have to bring it up a lot.
Yeah.
And then for some other random person to say, get his head on a platter, he's been putting it out there quite a bit.
Well, if John really did have a major following, that's it could be.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. He would have to give speeches.
Yeah.
Like it wouldn't just be enough where it's like he's discussing with like a small group and then like it just gets out of control in some way.
Yeah.
Like for it to kind of spread this much where random people want him dead for it or something else. I don't necessarily know why they want him dead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're good.
Like I thought that was the reason, but this story is so weird. It's like it's random.
Well, let's take a look at another story. So this is the execution of John the Baptizer according to Josephus. So, Eric.
Okay. Now some of the Jews thought that the destruction of Herod Antipas's army came from God, and that very justly, as a punishment of what he did against John, that was called the Baptist. For Herod slew him, who was a good man, and commanded the Jews to exercise virtue, both as to righteousness towards one another and piety towards God, and so to come to baptism. For that the washing with water would be acceptable to him, if they made use of it, not in order to the putting away or the remission of some sins only, but for the purification of the body, supposing still that the soul was thoroughly purified beforehand by righteousness. Now when many others came in crowds about him, for they were very greatly moved or pleased by hearing his words, Herod, who feared lest the great influence John had over the people might put it into his power and inclination to raise rebellion, for they seemed ready to do anything he should advise, thought it best by putting him to death, to prevent any mischief he might cause, and not bring himself into difficulty of it when it would be too late. Accordingly, he was sent a prisoner out of Herod's suspicious temper to Machaerus, the castle I before mentioned, and was there put to death. Now the Jews had an opinion that the destruction of this army was sent as a punishment upon Herod and a mark of God's displeasure to him.
So what we have here, basically, from Josephus says that John was becoming very popular and that Herod was becoming very nervous about John's popularity and that John might lead a rebellion against Herod. And so Herod struck first by putting him in prison and then killing him there. And so definitely like a different story. Is it possible that both or elements of both could be true? I suppose so. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah. So this one from Josephus is neater.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of like what you might expect to happen, it's pretty neat. A guy's getting popular. Perhaps we, combine some of this other stuff with the wife and everything, where it's like he's using a whole bunch of these personal attacks to really rile up the people, which is helping to maybe foment a rebellion or something like that. I mean, it's like that it's neater. The problem is it's just still the other story is just bizarre. Who's this other person? This mom that wanted him dead so bad? Why is he willing to throw out all this stuff for this girl?
I think it was just a sensational, it's kind of like tabloids.
Yeah, it's super like tabloidy. I mean, is this supposed to be some sort of defense? Is this like Roman like political government defense of it? Well, he was just, he was really drunk.
Yeah.
And there was a pretty girl, and you know how this goes. You start offering up half your kingdom, whatever they want, but she comes back wanting this guy dead. You got to do what you got to do. You got to fulfill your word. What am I supposed to do? Not fulfill my word?
Mm-hmm.
But even then, that's bizarre propaganda to like try to defend yourself. Like, I don't know.
It's strange.
Or for somebody to make up,
yeah.
Or some ally of Herod is making up this story, and Herod would just rather him shut up. Like, this isn't really helping.
Yeah. If if we tried, or if we, I guess, yeah, for lack of a better word, tried to synchronize both stories, I guess one could explain it as that, yeah, Herod first arrested John because Herod and Herodias were pretty much like upset that John is getting popular and criticizing them. And I mean, that could be like, maybe that's what, even like according to the story from Josephus here, Herod was afraid that John was going to lead a rebellion, and so maybe Herod has good reason to believe that because indeed John is criticizing him and his marriage to Herodias, and so like in that sense, those two stories I guess could be synchronized, and that fits nicely. Um, and then maybe as they so basically then Herod arrests John, but he doesn't execute him right away. It doesn't say this here in this Josephus text right here, but actually John the Baptist was in jail for at least 6 months, maybe even a year, on this castle near the Dead Sea, Machaerus. I'm not sure how you pronounce that, but so his arrest and his execution do not happen right away. They're definitely at least 6 months between those two events, and maybe Herod wasn't really sure what to do with John. Like maybe just having him in prison was kind of good enough for Herod at the time. And then though maybe Herod has this banquet and things get out of hand with his dinner guests, with his wine, with his sexy stepdaughter, and kind of then all of them together, basically through some sort of mix of strange events, decide to execute John, have the order sent to execute him, and then happens. And then later on, but then like as Josephus is kind of concerned, still the main point is that John was threatening Herod with the rebellion, and so Herod struck first or second, I guess, depending on how you count that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense.
Okay, so another thing that I noticed from this text, really interesting, I think, is that Josephus also uses the generalized word "the Jews," and I think this is a really, really interesting point because Josephus is very early. Josephus is in the time of Jesus himself, and so we're not. So this isn't like a few centuries after Jesus or something, but like so even as early as Josephus, the word for Jews, and Josephus himself was a Jew, as we know. Yet it does seem to be just norm or acceptable to use this word as a generalization. I just right now I counted 3 times. Now some of the Jews thought that the destruction of Herod's army came from God, and then basically later on, let's see. Herod slew John the Baptist, who was a good man, and commanded the Jews to exercise virtue. And then at the end, now the Jews had an opinion that the destruction of this army was sent as a punishment upon Herod and a mark of God's displeasure to him.
Yeah.
And can you back it up to the Mark one again, real quick?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
What are you looking for?
I was just trying to find the ways to synchronize it like we have there.
Yeah.
Because if it is family, yeah, I mean, family stuff can get super emotional. I suppose it's possible they could ask for that.
Also, too, I should actually mention, although we're going to cover this later on, but Herodias and Herod seem to be pretty close. And there's actually one very major example of this. This is jumping ahead, but basically Herod, unfortunately to him, he had a fall from grace. He got exiled to Spain, but Herodias was given the option to remain and keep his property, but Herodias chose to follow Herod into exile, where they ended their lives. So I think that's a really interesting datum.
Oh, that is interesting. Yeah.
Because it shows like that, these are really close, so like so for example, if Herodias like totally didn't care about Herod, I could almost see that, like, she's just like a pain in his side, and he doesn't know how to, and she's out of control or something. But yeah, on the other hand, or maybe that they were really working along. I mean, they didn't always see eye to eye on everything, but were somewhat co-responsible for the execution of John the Baptizer. So Bill Harrowman, he is the New Testament chronologist and history blogger that I found recently. He's recognized by the SCL affiliate program Biblioblog, and on his blog he has a really good 7-part series on John the Baptizer and Sejanus. Really good, asking questions about when this execution of John took place. So right now in these 2 texts, we've been talking about like why the execution took place, who was responsible, what were the events that led up to it. What Bill talks about here in his blog is a lot like, what does the downfall of Sejanus, or where does that story fit in? And the reason why this is important is this: when Sejanus fell from power, there was repercussions of this to anyone who was allied with Sejanus. How Sejanus was accused of conspiring against Tiberius, and Herod Antipas was allied with Sejanus. And so one of the questions that Bill is asking a lot in his blog post here is, what did Sejanus's downfall, what could be the political events that would have allowed Herod to execute John, or motivated him to? So just to kind of then explain, it's like, the summary is like, did John, was John executed right before Sejanus fell from power and was executed, or was he executed right afterwards? And there are some good, really good thoughts on that about, like, was Herod willing to, like, if Herod sacrificed or executed John before Sejanus fell, maybe Herod felt that he still had the protection of Sejanus and wasn't really worried about the repercussions of that. Or the other, if Herod executed John after Sejanus fell, maybe Herod was trying to prove to his fellow elites that, hey, he was tough, he was showing power against this popular leader John the Baptizer, and wasn't really afraid of an uprising by the people. Maybe he was doing it as a show of force to help legitimize his rule when his ally Sejanus was now no longer available to protect him. So some good questions really to ask. Okay, so speaking of conspiring, now we're going to talk about Herod Antipas's own downfall. So as I mentioned before, Sejanus was accused of conspiring against Tiberius, which led to his immediate execution in October of 31, the year 31. Herod Antipas was also accused of conspiracy, and this time, but it did not end in Herod's death, or at least right away. It was he got exiled. So let's see, my turn. Josephus relates that Herodias, jealous at Agrippa's success, persuaded Antipas to ask Caligula for the title of king for himself. However, Agrippa simultaneously presented the emperor with a list of charges against the tetrarch. Allegedly, he had conspired against Tiberius with Sejanus, executed in 31 AD, and was now plotting against Caligula with Artabanus. As evidence, Agrippa noted that Antipas had a stockpile of weaponry sufficient for 70,000 men. Hearing Antipas's admission to this last charge, Caligula decided to credit the allegations of conspiracy. In the summer of 39 AD, Antipas's money and territory were turned over to Agrippa, while he himself was exiled to Spain. Caligula offered to allow Herodias, as Agrippa's sister, to retain her property. However, she chose instead to join her husband in exile. Let me back up to this map here. So again, we just kind of see what's going on, all the stuff that's going on. So basically, we have, at this time, we have Herod, who was the tetrarch in Galilee for several decades, a very, very successful, long, successful reign. But his a fellow Herodian, Agrippa, had a falling out with Herod Antipas. And so Agrippa accused, so Agrippa and Caligula were friends. So the Roman emperor after Tiberius were friends. Agrippa, and because Agrippa grew up in Rome, and he was friends with Caligula. Now, Antipas was trying to ask Caligula to let him be king. And then, surprisingly, at the same time, Agrippa is accusing then Antipas at the same time of conspiring basically with Sejanus to get rid of Tiberius. And so these like so we have all these kind of all five of these people here involved in the story. Antipas, Agrippa, another Herodian, were basically, Agrippa then attacked Antipas. Agrippa was friends with Caligula. He grew up in Rome together. And so Herod was accused then and found guilty by Caligula of conspiring with Sejanus to oust Tiberius. So that's a really interesting story, I think, that brings them all together, all those people together. Any thoughts about that?
Not too
Okay.
much.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say the one thing that's kind of odd is so with Herodias, they're playing up that trope where it's like this whole Roman political elite women are always out, I guess, playing games and are bloodthirsty.
Yep.
And she kind of gives up the end to retain property. I don't know.
Yeah, from my understanding of the story, it's well, first of all, there's one other kind of interesting thing to know about the story too. Agrippa, Herod Agrippa, who grew up in Rome, he, through a series of certain events, he became totally broke and had some massive debts. And so for a while, he was very powerless and maybe even like struggling with the end of whatever sort of power and influence he might have. But he was able to turn that situation around. And then he started becoming very powerful again. And so this is what Herodias was jealous of. So Agrippa starts to soar. He finally starts to get that success. He recovers from his massive debts. And now, so Herodias, meanwhile, the woman is kind of him pushing Antipas to go ask Caligula for the title of king, like what his father had, Herod the Great, king of the Jews. And so Herodias and Herod Antipas, they're like thinking, oh, okay, maybe now's our chance. Let's go to Caligula, the new emperor, and maybe he'll give us the title of king of the Jews. And so they're really hopeful for this. They're pushing for this. And actually, maybe it's even Herodias herself that's kind of pushing Antipas even more, giving him like that motivation to do so. So they go to Caligula, but suddenly Agrippa, fellow Herodian, says, oh, wait, Caligula, wait, hey, check this out. You shouldn't do this because Antipas and Sejanus were conspiring against each other to take them out. So all of a sudden, fates changed drastically there, and that ended Antipas's rule. And then Agrippa is the one then who overtook his territory. So Agrippa then got a lot of territory as much as like Herod the Great had around that much.
And so that would include her property as well, then, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, it's weird. So I don't know why she would give up on that. So it's obviously an interesting brother-sister relationship there. That if she is.
Oh wait,
sorry, I'm getting some coffee.
Yeah, no problem. But I wouldn't say brother sister. I would say, wife. This is like husband and wife, but it was.
Oh, sorry, Agrippa. So with Agrippa. So Herodias as Agrippa's sister.
Right. Okay. Yes.
So I'm saying, like, why would she? If they don't have that good of a relationship, why is she giving up her property here? After he just basically screwed her brother, basically screwed her over completely.
It's a really interesting story. Maybe that's a great question. Maybe she really did truly love Antipas, and that she was willing to follow him to exile, and
lose her property after that.
Huh?
And then she's gonna have to lose her property and everything.
Right. Like so, this is costing her own property as well too. Yeah.
So she first has that problem with John the Baptist because it's attacking her own relationship, personal life. Then, so we have that as far as, and then here trying to persuade him to become king. So playing up that kind of political game, being jealous at Agrippa's success. I mean, maybe that would be the part that we might look at more so. Was she jealous of his success and was trying to get Herod Antipas to get a greater role? Or did she really want that power then? Because if she is going to just give up her property to go off with Antipas, then why push yourself out there when politically when politically you already had some shaky ground? I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. I think so. You're saying like
maybe that's the part that we should be looking at a little bit more. Was she really jealous? Did she really try to push Antipas to become king? Is this making just Agrippa look really cool? Like, oh, they were, trying to become king and I pulled the rug out from under him. Did she really care about that then? If she's willing to kind of give it all up at the end?
But if she was willing to, are you saying that was she kind of maybe conspiring with Agrippa himself, her brother, and like kind of like happy to let Antipas get exiled and kind of
no, because then she has to lose all that other stuff too. But I'm just saying, like, was she really pushing for it? If politically they were already a little scared of their own position, would they be asking for more power?
Right. Maybe they had no idea that Agrippa would be able to. Maybe that caught them totally by surprise.
Could be.
And that was like a major shock when it sounds like they're actually, because they're thinking, oh, let's go to Caligula to ask him for the title of king. I mean, obviously they thought there was a chance that he would say yes, or they wouldn't have asked him. So like, yeah, let's go ask for Caligula to be for him to make us king, or you king, Intipus. Then all of a sudden, oh, not only are you not going to be king, you're now exiled. Like, that's a huge twist in the story. It must have been shocking for them.
Well, yeah, because it's Agrippa doing it's her own brother pushing,
right, and that too, yeah,
pushing that out.
Yeah, brother pushing them out, yeah.
And so Agrippa gains a lot of. So he's going to be getting control over this area, in this territory, where Antipas had it. Interesting. Yeah.
So then, so actually look back here to this map here. Although you can't see this here, but basically after here's Antipas's reign. And when Antipas's reign ends right here in 39, basically Agrippa gets that in Judea. So basically Agrippa then gets the amount, his territory extends to around the size of Herod the Great, I believe, or even more than Herod the Great, if I remember correctly. And so, this is a pretty big deal. That was Agrippa's relationship with Caligula really paid off. He was able to work the system. And that's really what we have here, basically. I think that also can't be underestimated in the story. The fact that Agrippa and Caligula were buddies in Rome as kids, that's what happens when I think that this is an example of why people make alliances, and just kind of more proof that alliances really do pay off. And so, like, we all these past few meetups, we've been talking about who's allied with who, because it really does make a difference.
Yeah.
If you're allied with the right person, you may go up. If you're allied with the wrong person, you may go down. And in this case, Antipas and Pontius Pilate were both allied with Sejanus. For a time, they thought that they were in a really good place. They were really happy with that. Sejanus was about to be emperor. In fact, they would have benefited from him being emperor, and maybe even did things to subtly hope that Tiberius would be killed off or whatever, and Sejanus would be the emperor. Maybe, in fact, maybe the allegations are against Herod Antipas are even true. Maybe Antipas really did want and was hoping to work with Sejanus to kill off Tiberius, possibly. I don't know. Because, when you're allied with people in power, there's benefits for you. Unfortunately, Sejanus fell from power, and then that caused Antipas as well to fall. And meanwhile, the alliance between Caligula and Agrippa really sure did help out Agrippa when Caligula became emperor. I think it's really cool. Like, this to me has been the fascinating thing about these series of meetups here, is like about how these just alliances that many kind of historians, I guess, of the Bible don't really take into consideration. I think that the typical attitude is between theologians and historians, from broadly speaking, is that, oh, Pontius Pilate was a Roman, and so he's working with the Romans. It's like that generalization. The problem with the generalization, the problem is no. You can't just generalize. It's not just that Pontius Pilate was a Roman and working with the Romans. It's more, there are more complexities to that. Which faction within the Romans was Pontius Pilate working for? That's the better question.
Yeah.
Who is Agrippa the First is related to Antipas by what?
So
his sister.
I do actually have let me actually pull up. I do have a family tree here.
Okay,
so it would be Herod Antipas would be his brother-in-law.
Right, but where did Agrippa come? Like, he's coming out of nowhere, or like what's his family history? Son of Aristobulus?
I actually have a really good family tree here for this. Let me show you here. This is actually a really good question here. Herodian family tree. So this here, it was done by I can't remember what organization. Biblical Archaeology magazine, maybe. I think that's what it was. They put this really cool timeline here. So this is a really nice family tree here that answers that question. So here's Herod Antipas. This is the guy who we're talking about here, Herod Antipas. Here's John the Baptizer. He rebukes the marriage of Antipas with Herodias. Herodias was originally the wife of Herod Philip, who basically is another Herodian through a different mother. Okay. Then basically Agrippa. Here's Agrippa right here. Agrippa and Herodias are brother and sisters of Mariamne, the Hasmonean princess that King Herod marries.
So he's the half brother of Herod. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what was it that John the Baptist, like, why was the marriage with Herodias considered corrupt again?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Like, the actual reason, I guess, like, I'm not sure what specific law it was breaking. Like, was it just that he like divorced? Like, what are you asking? The specific law that may have been.
What happened? What did Herodias do? Why is Herod Philip?
So Herod Philip, Herod Antipas being half brothers.
Yeah.
That you can't have one brother get divorced and then the other brother marry her.
Yeah,
it was a divorce. It wasn't that he died, right?
Huh?
Herod Philip.
Yeah, was it a divorce?
No, yeah, it was a divorce. Herod Philip did not die.
And that's the thing I don't get with John the Baptist. I don't know why he cares.
Maybe I think there might have been a law,
But that doesn't apply to these people, though, right?
I'm just trying to think, like, if Herod, I think maybe he didn't truly divorce, like he didn't divorce her in the right way or something. Like he considered her
Like it wasn't a
still,
real divorce.
it
Yeah.
wasn't a real divorce maybe.
Herod
Or if
Philip
he
is
didn't,
still the actual good wife. But again, I don't
yeah,
see why Jewish law doesn't apply to these people though, right?
no, they're supposed to be Jewish.
Yeah, I think that they would still apply to them. I
They're
mean,
supposed to be quote unquote Jewish,
yeah, they're
right?
supposed to.
Okay, so they're still gonna. Okay,
If they're ruling the nation, they should
I
be.
get.
It's like,
Yeah,
moral crusade. He's trying to say like, hey, look at the leaders here. The leaders are corrupt, and they're.
and
You
these
know
are
what?
supposed to be good Jewish leaders.
Well, I guess it's not that they are supposed to be good Jewish. It's that Jewish leaders should be good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, too, the Herod Antipas's divorce of the Nabatean princess to marry Herodias. I mean, that's like a major, major thing because for two reasons. One, as I talked about a lot already, he's violating Jewish law by marrying the wife of his brother, his step or his half brother, and this is what John the Baptist heavily criticizes him for. But that's just one part of it. The other thing, as I mentioned earlier, is that like when he divorces this Nabatean princess, that was a really big deal too. This is like about political alliances here. The king of Nabatea was very upset about this, and I believe there was a brief military scuffle because of this.
This is a good graphic, by the way. We should have had this in the presentation.
Yeah, yeah.
This makes it way more clear.
Yeah,
Because I got confused with this Herodias Salome stuff.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. So
This is a good chart.
maybe, in fact, actually, one possible thing that we don't have any direct evidence of, but could be likely, it's possible that John the Baptist was in favor of the marriage of the political alliance between Herod Antipas and Nabatea. It's possible. I don't know. Like, there's no evidence of this, but maybe like when Herodias divorces the Nabatean princess and marries Herodias. I mean, this is like two major just absurdities according to John the Baptist, and he's calling out, and this really upsets him. He's making a big deal about it.
Well, yeah, they're also half. She's like half sisters with that. Now I see it. Yeah, that's probably the biggest flaw they're breaking is that she's a half sister with Antipas,
Uh-huh.
right?
But
yeah,
that would have been the case with Herod Philip too, right?
Yeah.
yeah, I
So-
guess she's like or a cousin. Maybe she's like a cousin of Antipas. Are you talking about Antipas and Herodias together, these two?
Yeah, because look at
Yeah,
Herodias
those are
comes
cousins.
from Mariamne, who's the wife of Herod the Great. So it would have been a great grand. You know what I mean? Like they would have been related very much.
Gotcha. Yes. Yeah. So I mean, they're definitely intermarrying like the Romans did. In this
Yeah,
Wait,
that might have
okay,
been what he
well,
was
okay.
saying.
Wait a second. So the red, those are the children of Herod the Great, correct? Or no, sorry, wives of Herod the Great.
Yes. The red ones are the wives. Yep.
Of
That's a
Herod
good
the
point,
Great.
yeah. And then
Okay, so Herod Antipas is, is the son. So so who's this Mariamne? No, it's somebody else. That's not who Herod Antipas was married to. That would be his aunt.
Well, she's a generation removed. It looks like she's a little bit younger
Yeah,
than.
that would be his aunt, though.
Yeah, I agree, Eric, that she's a generation, or at least I don't know how this may not be exactly chronological, perfectly like that, but yeah. So like Herodias though is kind of like a grandchild of Herod the Great, whereas Herodias Antipas or Herod Antipas and Herod Philip are both children of Herod the Great. Yes.
So who was Antipas? So Herod Antipas's first wife was somebody else completely unrelated, right?
Yeah,
so Nabatea.
Yeah,
so those are like
Nabatea. Uh-huh. And
a Jewish princess from Nabatea. Nabatea
No,
is like Arab.
Yeah, it's like an Arab, yes, an Arab princess. And it was basically for creating a political alliance. So this is like, again, like it's a really big deal. Like that the Antipas divorced this princess and married Herodias. I mean, this is like, I can see why people are so upset. It's two big blows. One, it basically is screwing over a political alliance that he had with this Arab country or maybe in Arabia territory, Nabatea. And then also too, then perhaps violating.
Which was still a Roman province though.
Right,
So
yeah.
it's just kind of like aligning provinces.
Yeah, I think
But-
Herodias might have
But
been.
Herodias was already married to Herod Philip, so it was already
It was already incestuous.
yeah, sort of. But I think is it just cousin though?
Yeah, but I don't think that that's what pissed off John. It's not that.
Those are all half brothers.
Like the fact that Herodias married Herod Philip, I don't think that was a violation of Jewish law, or at least not or maybe it was, but that's not what really made John mad. I think what made John mad is the fact that Herodias was married to Philip, just the divorce from Philip and the remarriage to another brother.
So Mariamne had some other kid who we don't know.
Right.
That's in the green bar.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is. So all those people are brothers and sisters, and then this one is oh, so not nephew. This would be what was it? It's at the nephew level with Herodias.
The opposite. She's the niece.
Yeah, so but I'm saying it's at that level.
Yeah.
So Herod Philip married his niece, and Herod Antipas married his niece.
Yeah. Oddly.
So Herod the Philip already did that though.
Right.
First. So that one's already a niece, and then the next one's a niece as well.
What's interesting too, I think too, is that like Salome is a daughter of Herod Philip, and so it's possible that she maybe could have been upset by this divorce and remarriage, but apparently not. It seems, if this story from the New Testament is accurate, that maybe Salome followed basically Herodias and basically sided with Herodias and Herod Antipas. So like Salome also kind of allied, I guess, with Herodias and Antipas, and the three of them, Antipas, Herodias, and Salome, then on the night of John's execution, kind of conspired together, I guess, or through drunken reasoning, decided to execute John, who is basically being very vocal about this marriage here.
Yeah, so it seems like, why would it be? So it seems like the issue here really isn't the divorce thing. It's more of it being a niece, right?
Yeah, but I'm saying that
I'm just wondering why that didn't come up. Why they didn't say that more explicitly? Why would he be more concerned? Because didn't it say something more about divorce with him?
Yeah, like according to the.
Why is he concerned about the divorce and all this stuff when it's still the niece? That would still be not allowed though.
Well, no, actually, I think John the Baptist from the text in Mark, I believe it was, that he's concerned about the marriage of Antipas with Herodias, and that he shouldn't do it because she was already married to his brother Philip.
But why didn't he be concerned about it being his niece? Isn't that worse?
Maybe not. I don't know for sure, but maybe because all this intermarrying within families was kind of like the norm. I think the Hasmoneans did it.
Not with nephews and nieces, though. It would be with cousins, right?
I don't know.
Because I think with Jewish law, I think nephews and nieces is not allowed.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question.
Okay, I think cousins are. I don't think nephews and nieces are. Do you know, Eric?
I don't. Like there is. I mean, it's definitely in there, like which people you can marry and all that, but I don't remember.
Pretty sure it's only cousin though. Let me.
But even if it was, I would say it was just added to his rebuke. Like he probably rebuked all of it, but this was just another, like one more thing.
Yeah, it's possible. Okay, so in other words, it's possible there were three things that upset John. One, maybe the divorce from Nabatean princess because of the trauma that caused with the political alliance. Maybe two, it was because he married his brother's wife. And then three, maybe because he married his niece and not like a cousin. So I don't know, those, either way, it sounds though that maybe that all this was like a really big deal to John.
So what would John gain from any sort of relationships with Nabatea? But like I don't know if he would really care.
Yeah, maybe not. I don't know about that.
Because Herod Antipas might care about stuff like that, whether it's trade relationships or back dealing. Because Nabatea has it's a good trade network through them. A lot of spices come through there up the Red Sea. So I mean, Nabatea has cool stuff. So Herod might care, but I don't know. I don't know if John would care.
Well, yeah, I mean, but you can
I
even.
think John would care about who's leading, but I'm just wondering, why would he care about Nabatea though?
Yeah, but I think that even like just as in today's politics, certain people are kind of supporting alliances with certain countries, even though it never really benefits them directly necessarily.
But she wasn't Jewish though.
Yeah, I know, but maybe like she liked having this. Maybe he liked the Nabateans. I don't know.
I don't know.
Or yeah, I
I
mean,
think it's because he's more like this religious guy
yeah,
and reformer type,
but I
and he
don't think
cares about purity. I don't know if he would care
you can't
about the
really separate
political alliance.
you can't really separate religion and politics too much in this time.
Yeah, but I'm still thinking about John the Baptist specifically though. I don't know if he would care about who's gaining
Right.
in terms of like. I think if he cares more about this marriage stuff, and it seems like that's more what got him killed, that he would care more about Jewish identity
Mm-hmm.
and integrity than he would care about that other stuff.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, this is a great.
Because if he's doing baptizing, I mean, he's not establishing trade relationships. He's not like a trader. He's just baptizing people. I don't know. I don't know if he would care.
Yeah, it's possible. Yeah, and I
and then maybe he didn't care about Herod Philip because he wasn't the leader, and so he's just okay. There's some sicko in the family, but now that Herod Antipas is getting involved and he's supposed to be our leader, now I need to speak out.
Right.
So I could see maybe he didn't say anything about Philip because maybe it didn't matter.
That's a possibility. Yeah, I understand. You're saying that maybe he didn't really care about Philip, or maybe he did and he was critical about that too, or something, but didn't express it. I don't know.
It didn't matter because he wasn't really the leader. It's just family, and it's a little bit easier to get away with that than criticizing the leader.
Yeah.
Because then now that comes with implications of if you're criticizing the leader, you think somebody else should be in charge.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it automatically is almost slightly rebellious. Whereas if you're criticizing, Herod Philip, the leader's brother, it doesn't necessarily mean that you want to change the leader here. In fact, it's almost good. Look who's next to me, right? Make sure they have me compared to that guy.
Well, so one thing that like Bill Harrelman then talks a lot about as well too is like, so when did this happen? Because there are two possibilities, and chronologists actually dispute this. Was it the year, I believe, like 28 or the year 29? Or no, sorry, 20, 30 or 31 or something, where in between Sejanus, right around Sejanus' downfall. And some people say that Herod Antipas would never do two things that were really controversial: divorce the Nabatean princess for the political alliance, and kill John the Baptizer, who was very popular. He would never do this if he didn't have the protection of Sejanus, basically kind of reassuring him that he would do it. That's one theory. And that's definitely just a theory, and it's not proven anything. But that theory kind of does make sense. That I mean, these are two pretty big, bold moves, and I don't. And basically, people might argue that on the other hand, some say that it might have happened after Sejanus fell, because Antipas maybe was trying to reassert his power and basically his reputation amongst the elite, and not worry and not have any concern about the possible uprising by the masses.
Did Agrippa have a lot of connections to Nabatea? Did he have allies there? Because I mean, it might make sense if you feel like your position is just getting really weak there, anyways.
Yeah, that's a really good.
And Herodias just looks so much better. I don't like this other one. So it's like I could see if maybe like it didn't seem like it mattered. Also, I see this Bernice and King Herod Agrippa II.
Yeah,
a brother-sister possible marriage, because that's showing direct lines from King Herod Agrippa first.
Yeah, maybe so.
That's a brother-sister marriage there.
Yeah, it's possible that there is some. I believe this comes from non-biblical texts as well. Some historians, maybe Josephus even, or maybe others. I don't recall that one, but I believe that there was some like suspicions. I think maybe of some affair between those two.
That's bizarre.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that was fun. That was really good talking about that particular one. So let me get back in here then. Go to let's see here. Okay, that's one we just read. Okay. Well, just to finish up here, we just have two more slides, And the last two really is just the question here: did Jesus have informants within Herod's circles? And there are two people that could have been possible informants advising Jesus what Herod was doing, what was going on. One could be Joanna, and this is what we're looking at right here. So I'll read this one. Joanna is a woman mentioned in the Gospels who was healed by Jesus and later supported him and his disciples in their travels. One of the women recorded in the Gospel of Luke as accompanying Jesus and the 12 and a witness to Jesus' resurrection. She was the wife of Chuza, who managed the household of Herod Antipas, the ruler of Galilee. And these are the her two instances in Luke. Soon afterward, he went on through cities and villages, proclaiming and bringing the good news of the kingdom of God. And the 12 were with him, and also some women who had been healed of evil spirits and infirmities. Mary, called Magdalene, from whom 7 demons had gone out, and Joanna, the wife of Chuza, Herod's household manager, and Susanna, and many others, who provided them out of their means. So this verse basically says that Jesus had some really wealthy supporters. So what Luke is saying here is that he had some wealthy supporters. What also, though, could be asked is, could Joanna serve as like an informant even, and even kind of helping Jesus understand what's kind of going on within Herod's circles and giving him tips and all that. And the other verse is possible, other passage in Luke possibly refers to the same Joanna, but it's not clear. And they remembered his words. This is at after Jesus' death and resurrection. And they remembered his words, and returning from the tomb, they told all these things to the 11 and to all the rest. Now it was Mary Magdalene and Joanna and Mary, the mother of James, and the other women with them who told these things to the apostles. Okay, last one. Another possible informant is Manaen, or Manahen, as some is translated sometimes. Devin, you want to read this one?
Sure. Right, now there were in the church at Antioch prophets and teachers: Barnabas, Simeon, who was called Niger, Lucius of Cyrene, Manaen, a lifelong friend of Herod the Tetrarch, and Saul. Next up, however, Antipas's stepbrother or lifelong friend, Manahen, became a follower of Jesus. Okay, so
sorry, this is kind of jumping around. So, let me explain this quick. So the first passage here from Acts, this is just the only time Manaen is mentioned. Only this in Acts right here. There's no other mention of him in at least the New Testament texts. And it says that he was a lifelong friend. The next quote
of Herod Antipas.
Yes, of Herod Antipas. And these next two quotes, one come from Wikipedia, one comes from Encyclopedia of the Bible. And there's just kind of reflecting on what did this even mean to be a lifelong friend of Herod Antipas.
And this next one, so where do we get the information that he was his stepbrother?
So I believe that the this word that the ESV translated as lifelong friend, I believe that is actually the word that could be stepbrother.
Did they use it metaphorically too? To mean like sure. Friend?
Okay. Yeah, I need to look into that one, but I believe that that's the word, but that actually maybe is better translated as foster brother, or
okay.
But they chose to just translate as lifelong friend.
Okay, gotcha. So however, Antipas' stepbrother or lifelong friend Manahen became a follower of Jesus. Manahen became a leader in the very early Jesus movement in Antioch and was perhaps a foster brother or lifelong friend of Herod Antipas. Manahen may have had 1, founded the church in Antioch, 2, given Luke, the author of Acts, eyewitness info on Jesus, and 3, ordained Paul on his first missionary journey.
Yeah, and then another one, this other quote is from another encyclopedia.
Ordained Paul on his first missionary journey. That's a big may have. Is there anything about that?
Yeah, I know. Both those last two ones are given Luke eyewitness.
Given him, I know when it's like he's mentioned once.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I know it's. I believe that. I don't. That's a good question. It's possible that we don't really have reliable information on that. I need to follow up more with that.
Yeah. Is it just because he was hanging around Antioch? I mean, is that where they're drawing the other stuff here?
I believe it's known that he was a leader in the church in Antioch, and the church in Antioch was actually one of the largest churches and the very earliest churches after Jerusalem. And so it's possible that this guy, and the fact that he was connected politically and with power and money as well, that it's possible that he really was like a leader of that church.
Yeah.
And so I think that's very realistic.
Yeah.
And then yeah, I would though need to study more about how he may have been related with Paul.
Yeah. It's also a location of a holy hand grenade.
Yeah. Right.
The relationship of Antipas has been interpreted as foster brother, childhood companion, Berkeley, or courtier. Whatever the precise meaning, it was a relationship of honor and distinction, but it points to a striking contrast between the lives of the two men. He may have been related to an earlier Manahan in Essene, who was a friend of Herod the Great.
So, in other words, in Josephus, in Antiquities of the Jews, Josephus talks about a Manahan who was in Essene and was a friend of Herod the Great. However, we don't know for sure if this was the same one. It's possible.
So he would have been a friend with his father and his... Wait, what?
So Josephus
may have been related to an earlier Manahan, so another one.
Yeah. Well, or
okay.
Oh yes, like maybe Herod. That's a good point. Herod the Great. We're talking about two different Herods here. Yeah, Herod the Great was like,
and also a different Manahan too.
A previous generation. Yeah, so it's,
and then a different Manahan.
Yeah, and a different Manahan with friends of Herod Antipas, who was a different generation from Herod the Great.
Yeah. Menachem. It's in Hebrew. It'd be Menachem.
Yeah.
Menachem. Okay.
And Menachem the Essene was Josephus says he was the Av Beit Din of the Sanhedrin, along with Hillel, and so that means he was second in command after Hillel in the Sanhedrin, and that he, I think, somehow like went off and joined the Essenes, and that's why they called him Menachem the Essene. So he was a Pharisee that kind of. This is why people are interested in this guy in general. Maybe not the first one, but the Menachem the Essene guy.
Uh-huh.
He was a Pharisee, a high up Pharisee, who ended up joining him as the Essenes, or at least they called him an Essene, so they assumed that, and he left the Sanhedrin, I think. But he somehow made a prediction that Herod the Great would become a great ruler, and so Herod became his friend because of that. I don't know why though. What's weird is John the Baptist is anti-Herod's, and here's a scene that's like, is it pro-Herod? I mean, that seems weird too, so I don't know.
Yeah. So if it was some sort of foster relationship, I mean, I guess I get the relationship.
Well, so the point in these last two people that were just mentioned here is that Jesus had followers who had very intimate connections with Herod Antipas, and so there are some interesting questions that can be asked because of that. How much did they serve somewhat as informants, or did they maybe serve as somewhat as like a middleman between maybe Herod's circles and Jesus' circle? Like, did they try to help mitigate peace? Something. I don't know. Interesting.
So what was the Sejanus and Tiberius thing having to do with that? I was confused on that.
So are you talking about like how like the role of like where does Sejanus and Antipas come into play, kind of?
Yeah.
So basically, okay, well, so this is when Agrippa, or when Antipas gets exiled, when he falls from power, it was because Agrippa goes to Caligula, the new emperor, and says to Caligula, don't make Agrippa the king, because in fact, actually, he was conspiring with Sejanus to overthrow Tiberius, and then Caligula believed Agrippa, and so that's why he sent Antipas into exile.
But did this have anything to do with Jesus's death thing? Did you think, or?
I think that well, one question we were asking a lot about today too is like, where does John's death really fall into the current chronology of this? And that's one of the things that's kind of debated regarding Jesus's death. as we talked about last time, I think for me the big question is it possible that Jesus' death happened right after Pontius Pilate himself was executed? Or sorry, I meant to say Sejanus was executed, and because Pontius Pilate was now very worried because Pontius Pilate was basically allied with Sejanus, and so for me the big question is it possible that the reason why Pontius Pilate was not hesitant to execute Jesus, as many historians claim that he would have been, is it possible that the reason is because Sejanus, his patron, was suddenly now executed, and there was an attack against supporters of Sejanus, and so maybe Pontius Pilate was uneasy about this whole and was trying to walk on eggshells at first, or trying to see where the cards would fall.
Can you back it up to the original timeline? I just want to see how far removed Sejanus was to Herod Antipas real quick. Okay, to Agrippa.
Yeah.
Sejanus 231.
Yeah, so Sejanus
and Agrippa taking control in 39. So within the past, so we would assume this happened about 6-7 years later.
Right. Yeah.
Where he's talking to Caligula and getting him overthrown.
Yeah, or maybe
37. So 31 to 37.
Or
maybe he would have been talking to him.
Well, maybe Caligula gets in power in 37. Maybe Agrippa and Intipus go to him right in 38 or 39.
Yeah. So it would still be like 6-7 years after Sejanus is gone, saying, "Hey, this was happening 6-7 years ago to your adoptive grandfather." Mm-hmm. He was planning to overthrow him here.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what was the evidence he had for that again? It was arms.
Yes, no, that he had a weaponry for 70,000 men, and Antipas acknowledged that, yes, I do. And Caligula then, that was like the piece that Caligula then believed that was the evidence. That was sufficient evidence to convict Antipas of this conspiracy.
That's weird.
Yeah.
I figure it might not be that hard to get up to that number, especially when it's more on the eastern side of the Roman Empire anyways. This area was originally conquered when by the Romans?
Which area?
So Judea, Galilee. What year was it originally conquered?
Well, the Hasmoneans then invited the Romans in. Eric, do you remember the time?
63 BC.
Okay.
What year did you say, Eric?
63 BC.
So 63 BC. So this is almost 100 years later. So I just have to see what the size of the Roman Empire was. Because couldn't you just say, listen, we're still on the eastern end? So Roman Empire. Yeah,
but maybe you didn't get, maybe one of like the rules of being a puppet king is that you don't amass a large amount of arms without the approval of Rome. I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
True. Yeah.
You don't have your own armies to start doing what you want.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm just looking at the Roman Empire during Augustus's time. Yeah, I mean it's pretty much the Far East. It is the border. And I suppose you could claim that you're the far eastern end.
Yeah. Well, yeah, maybe
it pretty much ends there.
Yeah.
Let me see where it was under Tiberius real quick. So under Tiberius, I mean, it's stretching a little bit into Nabatea, but Nabatea is still mostly separate there.
Mm-hmm.
It's still pretty much the Far East, though, at that time.
Yeah.
So during Tiberius, this area is still the Far East. I don't know. Could you claim it? I mean, I guess you could, but it was unsuccessful. I don't know.
Yeah.
If you ever did claim it, but I mean, if you're the far eastern border, I think you'd also want a lot of arms there. But
I think but maybe still though, like maybe just
no communication about it.
A puppet king can't have amass a military without the approval.
Or you need some sort of records of that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So this is something that I had requested under Tiberius, and here's my documentation requesting this to have this ready, and you could build a defense for it.
Yep.
But if it's a secret cache that you don't have any records of Tiberius knowing about it, you're probably screwed then.
Right. One interesting thing is, how did Agrippa even know? That's kind of How did Agrippa know that Antipas had that cash?
Herodias?
Yeah, that could be.
Like she let something slip?
Right. Yeah. Okay, guys. Well, thank you very much. That
Or she tried to get Agrippa involved.
yeah.
And that's how Agrippa first found out about it. She was trying to get her brother involved in it.
Right.
And her brother decided to go a different route.
It could be. I like it. I like the questions. It's real good.
So if Agrippa was hanging out in Rome, how did he end up there?
How did he end up in Rome?
Yeah, and Herodias is way off in the Far East here.
So I believe, let me open up this map here again. But so how did Agrippa end up in Rome? That's a good question. I don't recall that for sure, but they were just sent there for education. So I think that maybe he wasn't the only Herodian who was there. Maybe several Herodians would be educated in Rome and then come back to rule in Judea and Galilee.
Yeah, and you don't send the girls away, you keep the girls at home. Okay, yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think things change. Grew up with a brother for a bit, but I was saying like he would have been sent away real early then, if he was a friend of Claudius, and they kind of like grew up together in Rome. That would have been sending a boy away really early.
Yes, I think that is. Yeah, I think that
Which happened. But so if Herodias was talking to Agrippa about it, I don't know. You don't necessarily have a close relationship with them, because this would have been still many years later.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe because Agrippa was in Rome, that's when they were talking about it.
Yeah.
Because hey, this is contact in Rome, and we're going to need some help here. So he could have found out about it at that point. I mean, I suppose if she was trying to establish contacts with them and needed some extra allies in Rome itself to kind of help pull things off, maybe.
Oh, in fact, actually, you know what? You reminded me of something that's important. I guess I didn't include it here in this presentation just because I was just trying to not just kind of limit that stuff. But since you mentioned it, one thing that happened with Agrippa that's really interesting is Agrippa was actually caught whispering that he hoped Tiberius would die so that his friend Caligula would be emperor.
Oh, sorry, yeah, Caligula was his friend, not Claudius.
Yeah. Caligula was his friend. So let me go back over to here real quick because I have let's see here. This is actually interesting here too. Let me go back here. Okay. So yeah, here we have like these guys here. So while Tiberius was the emperor, at one point Agrippa was caught whispering to Caligula that he hoped Tiberius would die so that Caligula would become emperor. Tiberius heard about this, and then he put Agrippa in jail, I believe, for several months. Until I think this happened right when Tiberius was dying. It was like the year 30. This may have been like in the year 37 or 36. So Tiberius is on his deathbed or getting close to, or maybe not. Maybe I don't remember if he was on his deathbed or not. But a few months later, though, Tiberius does die, and then Caligula releases Agrippa from prison. But that's just kind of another interesting twist. It kind of just to show like how tied, how associated, close like these leaders, the Herodians, were with the Roman emperors and their families.
Yeah, which is really interesting.
Yeah, I agree. It is interesting because just the connections.
It gets you a lot closer to Roman emperors than I originally knew. I didn't know it actually got that close.
Yeah, I agree. So, and then also too, Sejanus is, was close to the Pontius Pilate. The Tiberius's family, particularly Caligula, is close to Herod Agrippa, and we have the Herodians, involved. So, I think that there is, and this is kind of one reason why I think it's actually a really interesting question to ask. So, what did they know about Jesus? I think that a lot of historians these days, a lot of people would think it's absurd to even ask the question that, of course, Tiberius and Caligula didn't know anything about Jesus. That's a ridiculous question. He was just a peasant. And I don't know. I think that it's actually a good question. I don't know. I don't have the answer for sure, but I think it's a good question because people knew more about each other. There were closer connections than what we suspect.
Yeah, I mean, if you can get some close connections like that get you back to Rome with some of the political leadership, it could certainly come up.
Mm-hmm.
It would certainly have to be like kind of letter format.
Right.
So would they have sent a letter?
Or if they're, I don't know, or if they're like, hosting these parties, like these parties for the elites where John the Baptizer's execution was decided.
And there's connections and other people around to kind of retell what's going on and happening.
Right. Yeah.
Because I don't know if we have really any visits do we have any evidence of visits from Roman emperors this way? Or King or Herod himself after they get power coming back to Rome?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked, actually. There is actually Germanicus, who was slotted to be the emperor after Tiberius. In fact, he was at one point, many Romans regarded him as like Alexander the Great, the Roman version of Alexander the Great. He was very popular. He was going to be the next emperor after Tiberius. He spent a lot of time or several times going through Galilee or around, at least kind of near that region, going to Egypt, going to Nebatea, I believe. And so, he did pass through there. In fact, actually, Germanicus died in Antioch through like a mission through that part of the country. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it all comes back to how much was, what was it kind of like what we have in the Gospels, where the stuff happening with Jesus is pretty internal with the Jews, and Rome's getting pulled into it, or was there actually something where Pilate did care a little bit more? Because if he did, I could see this getting back more.
Yeah.
But if it is more like the way the Gospels kind of play it out, where like he's getting pulled into it, and the Jews are really pushing for it, maybe it didn't get back nearly as much, but it would kind of depend on those kind of first things that we have coming out. Was it quite like the Gospels have, where Pilate is not caring all that much about what's going on? Because if he didn't really care, maybe it never did get back.
Or
if that was like his real opinion of it, maybe he still just didn't care and didn't really talk about it.
Or
maybe it was a funny story. These Jews maybe kill somebody. It was funny.
Yeah, but maybe Pilate did care, but the way he cared is that he didn't want, for some particular reason, he was sensitive and he didn't want to get in a bad light and then eventually get accused of being a Sejanus supporter.
Right.
So yeah, I think that it's actually really interesting how there is much more of a connection between the Roman emperors, even the highest echelons of power, and then down to the fates of John the Baptist, Jesus, and them. I mean, it's definitely.
Yeah, I would say it's definitely fair to say there's a fair possibility. I mean, especially when we're dealing with Herod Antipas being a friend of Caligula and growing up in Rome.
Yep.
So I mean, if that's the case, then
Herod Agrippa being a friend of Caligula. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Or sorry, yeah, correct. Yeah, Agrippa. Yeah, Herod Agrippa being a friend of Caligula, the relationship there with Herod Antipas, his relationship with Herod the Great. Could stuff have been getting to Roman emperors because of that? I mean, if it's in Rome and you've got close family members like this, it definitely seems like it's a possibility.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, not only were the Herodians using the Roman custom of intermarrying within families, I mean, even just like, for example, looking at this chart reminds me of this, even just the names. In the Romans, we have several Agrippinas. And then we have, Herod Agrippa. Oh, here we have another, Marcus Vespasian.
Yeah. There's going to be the famous Agrippa, which is like I have to forget his name with this other Agrippa.
Yeah, so
he's the more famous one.
So again, this is another example of how the Herodians were kind of imitating in many ways and close and intermingling with the Romans, the Roman emperors even.
Yeah, because that Marcus Agrippa, he was the one going back to Mark Antony and Cleopatra and fighting them, and he was. Yeah, he's the famous one. Yeah. He was consul and everything.
Yeah. Real good. Okay, guys. Well, thank you very much. I really enjoyed this discussion.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, cool. Learned a lot.
Great. All right. Well, we'll talk with you guys later. You have a wonderful day, and
You too.
yeah, thank you.
Cool. Talk to you later.
Yep. Bye.